They're killing people.
We don't know actually who's behind of this.
Their life is not good.
All the bodies that they find, there was tight.
In the wake of Mozambique's worst attack yet by militants who say they're linked with ISIS, we've been given extraordinary access into the town which was targeted. We're flown in by military helicopter, the only way into Palma right now, in the remote northern Cabo Delgado province. At this point, it's nearly 2 weeks on from the violent attacks here, and there are still thousands of people missing. On the ground, soldiers and Mozambican special forces are spread throughout. And the hunt is on for those who wrought such terrible terror here. Many of the residents are still only just emerging after hiding in the bush ever since. They're all very hungry. They've survived on root vegetables and rainwater up until now. The soldiers are wary of those trying to re-enter the town in case the extremists are hiding amongst them, posing as villagers only to mount another attack. And they're lined up to be questioned and inspected before any of them are allowed through. The centre of Palma has taken a terrible battering. We're with the governor of the province, who's also seeing the destruction for the first time.
Those people returning, the people there are returning. Yeah, they're returning.
They feel it's safe enough now?
Safe. Yeah, they feel safe.
The dead are still laying in the open in the street. They haven't been able to retrieve them up until now. And there are modest attempts to give some respect to those who died in this terrifying and violent assault. We saw a body in what appeared to be camouflage clothing, wearing an ammunition vest, an outfit favoured by the terror group known as al-Shabab, or ISIS Mozambique. The attackers swept through Palma, setting fire to shops, homes and offices. All the town's key infrastructure was targeted, including the hospital and the administrative offices, and the mobile phone network was destroyed.
How can you guarantee it won't happen again?
This I can't say. What I have to say is that we are here with our troops, and we feel okay.
We saw the first residents to trickle back into the town after hiding for nearly 2 weeks, grabbing what they could from the vandalised shops. These are desperate times for Palma's residents. The struggle to survive is not yet over for those who managed to escape the attackers. Tensions are still incredibly high. The troops we were with arrested 3 young men who they say were acting suspiciously. That was a gunshot, and we were immediately hurried away and out of the town. The military may have moved into Palma, but there are still multiple challenges facing them. The attack has halted work on the $60 billion liquefied natural gas project outside Palma on the Afungi Peninsula. This was meant to transform the fortunes of this desperately poor region. Now security's been stepped up. The project is vitally important for Mozambique's economy. But in the smaller Afungi airport, terrified Palma families who'd taken refuge there told us how they fled for their lives.
I went to pick up my family, my wife and the kids, all of them. Then we went to the bush because the people, they was following us in the back. So after that, when we jumped one river, we found the people with the gun. They were shooting one people to another, and there's another people also just chopping at the people. So we tried to run away.
They're killing people.
How?
They shoot people, even they're following us, shooting us. Then we run away.
The governor went to try to reassure the thousands of people who fled the insurgents and have now taken sanctuary in the Katunda resettlement village on the edge of the LNG site. This village was built for those displaced by the huge gas project, but the numbers have now swelled to bursting. We're hungry, they keep telling us. And with all UN aid flights halted because of the militant attacks, these people have had very little to eat or drink in nearly a fortnight.
They're all saying how hungry they are and begging us for food and for the authorities to stop this conflict. Look at them, they're all calling, they're all saying, food, we want food.
No, al-Shabab is hungry. Hungry, yes. Hungry. I want my home. Here life is not good.
The governor promised they'd get help and be able to return to Palma within days. But they're getting more and more desperate. And more worryingly for Mozambique is how it protects these people, controls this militant insurgency and stops it from spreading. Little is known about this shadowy group which the US government has put on the international terror list because of its apparent links with ISIS. It has no known leader and appears to have foreign recruits from across the border in Tanzania, along with Ugandans, Somalians, even Arabs among its fighters. And it appears well funded too, with plenty of weapons and ammunition. Mozambique has abundant natural resources, and its beautiful beaches are an important attraction for its growing tourist industry. But it's still ranked one of the poorest countries in the world, with more than half its population living below the poverty line. Although before the emergence of this militant group about 4 years ago, it had a history of religious tolerance. There are suspicions the insurgency has more to do with geopolitical rivalries linked to Africa's single biggest investment in Mozambique. When we go back to Palma a few days later, we're in a convoy of contractors and selected journalists. Palma is the nearest town to the LNG project and was considered secure. The president knows his forces were caught off guard and is busy during our visit trying to bolster international cooperation, which he will need if Mozambique is to defeat this terrorism.
A lot more soldiers in Palma, an awful lot more people as they're trying to encourage them to come back and try to reassure them that they are safe again.
The residents are returning slowly. They're amongst the poorest in the country, and there are worries that some may have been seduced to join the armed group through poverty and desperation. One contractor with us was aghast at seeing the damage done to his business.
You see what's happened. That's outside, you think the truck is okay. I open and everything's burnt inside.
It's going to be tough to restore confidence here.
I'm finished with Mozambique. I'll try to sell my company. I cannot stay. No, I've got family. I need to take care about them.
There's an ongoing investigation into not only how the militants managed to overrun the town, but how they went on to lay siege to this hotel, which was packed with nearly 200 people, amongst them expats, foreign workers and villagers who'd taken refuge here. The Amarula Lodge has been ransacked now by looters who seem to have gone into every room, turning it upside down and stripping it of valuables. Survivors told us of a terrifying 3 days under fire, surrounded by militants and left to fend for themselves. Among them were these two South Africans, Wes on the left and his older brother Adrian.
Dad, lie down.
This footage, filmed by Wes on his phone, shows them taking cover in the hotel. His brother is lying in front of his father Greg in the check shirt. Now back home in Johannesburg, Wes said the shooting and mortar firing was constant.
You know, the gunfire just didn't stop, the mortars. I mean, you're talking about hundreds of mortars going off, like probably 40, 50 an hour.
But despite the fighting getting closer and closer, the brothers are constantly supporting each other.
Love you, bro.
Love you, my man.
We're all right, sir.
At this stage, only small helicopters operated by the private security company DAG appeared to be mounting any rescue. People were getting frantic, but DAG had already airlifted more than 20 people from the Amarula and promised to return.
We need confirmation ASAP.
Using their satellite phones, those still trapped in the Amarula repeatedly ask for help. Wearing flak jackets left behind by aid agencies and with no weapons at all, they come up with a plan to break out of the lodge side gate and retrieve a weapon they think is in the parked car outside. They don't know how many insurgents are lying in wait, but they know they're surrounded. Adrian, in the blue flak jacket, volunteers to do the running and searching.
What you doing? Adrian, come. Adrian, come.
It takes 3 runs before they come back with a single gun.
Right. You got it.
No, make this.
Well done. Well done, guys.
With no help apparently coming, they began packing themselves into the vehicles left at the lodge. The aim was to head out in a convoy. Adrian would drive one car.
It's going to be the drive of your life, bro.
Within minutes, they'd been ambushed. Several drivers and vehicles were hit and careered off the road. The brothers' vehicle was amongst those who kept going, only to be ambushed a second time. Adrian was shot twice.
I was holding his shoulder over the bullet wound, trying to stop the blood, and I was just pumping out. I started to drive, and I was just shouting back at them to put the other doses inside the bullet, the gunshot wounds. And
Was he still talking?
no, he had stopped talking by that time, and I was just shouting that I love him and that I look after his family, and that I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that this has happened to him.
They hid in the forest until the next day before DAG helicopters rescued them, with Wes insisting they take his brother's body with them.
We did everything for everybody, and it felt like nobody was doing anything for us, and my brother paid the ultimate price. They just abandoned us, didn't help us.
Adrian leaves behind a wife and 3 young children. And there was more. Under a tree opposite the Amarula Lodge, the villagers told us of a massacre. They say they found a dozen bodies which they buried here, all foreigners, they thought, taken from the lodge.
All of the bodies were laid out under the tree, with their hands tied behind their backs, and the heads had been cut off.
Mozambique's never seen anything like this wanton brutality and violence. The insurgencies led to a mass displacement of people, thousands of deaths, and sparked an humanitarian crisis. And the military admits they don't really know what they're dealing with.
We don't know the reason why they're fighting or who the enemy is.
So the hunt is on to find out, with Mozambique's leaders under considerable pressure to stem this insurgency, amid anxiety about what the terror group may be planning next. Alex Crawford, Sky News in Palma, Mozambique.